an opportunity now to offer some brief reflections and questions, or put them in the chat by all means, so we can harvest those. Your comments are very welcome. We also tomorrow will be soliciting your feedback, not only for our benefit but for the National Church and for AVA as well. So we'll send you out a form, an electronic form tomorrow, so you can think about that over the weekend and fill that in. Some simple questions, but always very helpful to get your feedback. Use your electronic hands now, and if you've got some reflections which would be helpfully shared with us, or questions, please offer them.
Never I can't find my electronic hand, so I put up a human one.
Rob, you go for it.
I've been kind of prodded into this question, and it's about, I guess, a concern about resources. And given that it's already been stated that the outcome of this process is not directional in terms of there's a predetermined outcome. So it does raise a kind of big question about what resources we divert, bearing in mind that gifts and resources are being well used already in order to enable this to happen. And certainly one message loud and clear was, if there's any assumption in this that it should all be ordained led, then that needs to be, addressed, because it should be lay and ordained. Obviously, I'm stating the obvious there, but I think some of the comments, even in the main contributions, there seemed to be a bit of a hint that this was for the ordained people. Maybe I'm reading something into it, but asking the question, how is this going to help us to be better disciples? How is it going to enable the church to be itself more so? There's a resource issue there, and I just put that on the table.
Sure. Thank you.
Sorry, go ahead.
You go ahead, Bishop Rose.
No, I was just very quickly going to say, it never occurred to me that we're asking only ordained. I think it has to be both lay and ordained. And even in those places where ordained is not in a lead, I am hoping that there would be encouragement from the ordained and engagement. Because if the laity sees the ordained engaged with it, then I think they will know that it is something for them too. I think the question you asked was something about how better. I'm sorry, I missed.
About being, it must be a contribution to being better disciples, I think was one of the things.
Yes, yes. I hope, it is my sincere hope, that from the experiences we've had, from what we have heard and listened to and engaged with in our group's discussion, that we would be prepared and ready and open, I think is what I would want to say, prepared and ready and open in the way we respond to one another. Because I'm sure what we saw in particular from that last clip is the sense of costliness for those who say, I am. And what do we do with that? How do we enable them? And the thought of the parents embracing their son, wonderful image. And so I hope that we will be better at listening without jumping in and saying, well, this is what I believe, and think about other people's experiences.
John Huggins.
Yeah, this isn't a question, this is a comment really, which is to say thank you, because my ordination training wasn't 1,000 years ago, and through that training and through all sorts of discussions since, whenever this subject has come up, it seems to have had a sense of battle about it. And today, I think for the first time, I've experienced conversations which have really had compassion and listening at their hearts. And I've really appreciated that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, John. We've had a comment in the chat noting that, you know, a lot of things going on in the diocese, restructuring issues we've been looking at. We've already talked about our Zoom and lockdown and so forth. A plea to go as slow as possible in some ways, and yet at the same time addressing the issues. So we've made note of that. Thank you, Andrew. Rachel, you've got your hand up. Rachel Robertson.
Thank you. You mentioned that we're moving into a sort of national discernment on this, where we'll share reflection together. You also mentioned earlier that we're part of the Anglican Communion, but we're sort of looking at this just from the Church of England point of view. I just wondered what the scope of that discernment can cover. Is everything on the table? I know that's part of the discernment, I know, but if you could perhaps just comment on that.
When you mean is everything on the table, can you just tell me a little bit more about what you mean?
So maybe just a specific, so in terms of maybe adopting a blessing for same-sex marriages in church, for example, where is that a potential that might come out of the discernment, maybe, if that's what's discerned? Or will we still be trying to operate within the Anglican Communion and the fact that we've got this broad range of views that we need to hold together?
Thank you. Yeah, that's helpful. I think I know this is sort of hard to how could I put it? It's hard to stay in the present moment, but one of the hopes of this whole process from the very beginning is that we might discover something that we haven't yet thought of. And we don't want to close that off by at this point saying, here are the options, you know, as you suggest, we could bless, not marry, or whatever. And so that's why, in a way, we're trying to stay in the present moment and yeah, be open to what might emerge that we haven't yet imagined, actually, about a way forward. So in a way, the straight answer to your question is yes, all sorts of things are possibilities. But in a way, I don't want to focus on what those possibilities are right now, if that makes sense.
Yes, I think also that we're not predetermining. We're not asking you to do something and already we have the answers to it. We don't know what's going to come from this diocese, from the other 40 plus dioceses. And we genuinely want to hear and discern together. So we're on this journey and we'll see what happens at the other end.
No, I understand that. I suppose I'm asking partly out of, well, conversely out of managing expectation, but yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think it would be true to say to whoever is asking you that in turn, to say, we don't know.
Yeah,
we don't know.
Thank you.
It's a broader discipleship question too, really, isn't it? Theologically, if we really are open to Jesus, we always end up in a place that we wouldn't have expected to arrive at. Always, it's when the church starts pre-planning things that we get into trouble. I sense that as a church, at the end of next year, we'll be in a place that we can't foresee at the moment, if we really are true in our prayers and in our following. So these are going to be interesting days. Are there any other questions?
Amanda.
I was just wondering, on a very practical note, really, thinking about how, say, we set up groups within our churches, how we might structure those groups. Because thinking about, for example, in our benefice, I know there are quite diametrically opposing views existing. Do we encourage people to be mixed in those groups? Do we allow them to self-select so that they're with a group of people that they will probably agree with? I mean, it would be great to encourage mixing across our benefice.
I think certainly on this that we need to begin from a place where we're not asking people to come because they hold a particular view. You know, that's not what we're interested in. We're actually interested in people simply coming together to learn and listen to one another, to learn from one another and to listen to one another. So if people are coming with entrenched views that says, you know, and they're also being bulgy about it, then perhaps that's not the environment for them, frankly. You know, we're not calling people into a group of conflict. We're calling people together where everyone within that group will feel able to express themselves and be themselves, and where there'll be genuine love and care taken for one another in that setting.
Ava, we've had a question in the chat about a youth version of the course.
Yeah.
Is there a version of that in the pipeline, or?
Yeah. Just very briefly, just to go back on that, I think also it also goes back to the question of laity and clergy, and of course, being possibly the only lay person in the room, I'm a little bit cautious about what I say, but I think there is something about setting God's people free here that also, rather than the language of allowing or organizing people, is help them to make decisions about how they're going to engage. And sometimes they might want to engage without a clergy person. We just need to be really sensitive to and aware of you know, potential power dynamics, even within the local context. And one of the things that we talk about in facilitation is absolutely about people who come already having, with the aim of making their decision known to others. And we talk about how we can help in the facilitation for people to come back a few steps and journey together rather than just bringing their decisions to the table. And yeah, hopefully that might entice some of you to come on the facilitation course. But as for young people, absolutely, we're producing, well, some of the advocates are doing a great job of producing some resources that are being adapted for young people. And I would really encourage wherever you have the possibility of engaging with young people, get in touch with Neville, who will be able to get it, you know, make sure that you have the appropriate resources. But absolutely make sure young people engage with them wherever appropriate. And I'd also say chaplaincies, fresh expression churches, please make sure they don't get left out in the process.
Thanks, Ava. It's also really good to tell you, because we're Canterbury, we've got a hefty number of lay people here today as well.
Yes, yes.
Which is
Great.
You're not alone.
we're all well represented there, which is really good. Stuart, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, Neville, not wishing to preempt your letter to us, but I'm just trying to, maybe when we get your letter, we'll understand properly the kind of separation between our responsibility to teach our communities and our responsibility to facilitate an open discussion around LLF. Are there any kind of preparations or assurances that anyone who defends traditional marriage or human sexuality will be supported through any potential CDM or complaint process by folk involved in the process who take offence at the traditional being spoken of? Just very mindful of Christians in the public sphere who have defended marriage, who have been hauled through the courts, and I'm not fully aware of the process in the Church of England, but you know, I'm actually quite anxious about the security of my role. Should I be asked, or yeah, I think I've said the question really, but I hope you understand that.
Yeah. Thanks for being so open about that, Stuart. And I think that point is well made. Really well made. I think it's important for us to hear.
Eva, have you picked this question up before in the other dioceses, and then I will respond?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the the things that propelled us to do the work on the braver and safer space is to recognize exactly that fear that there is, that Stuart's just mentioned, and to make it absolutely explicit that that people who have the doctrine that the Church of England currently teaches, who hold that and who express it and who teach it, you know, must not be somehow in some way judged or you know, somehow exposed for some reason. So there's some really explicit stuff in the Braver and Safer document about that, guidance about that, and we're very conscious of that dynamic, which fills, which is all about fear. And if we allow fear to take hold, then it will paralyze our attempts to relate to one another or to hear God, frankly.
And I think if I could just contribute to that and say that it would certainly depend on the context of what it is. You know, if someone was going into a situation and totally disrespecting the stories and the lived experience of the people in front of you, in a way that says, I am the only right, you know, God has spoken to me and this is exactly what God says, then I think there would be great difficulties there in terms of the care of those in your midst. So I would just want to say that there is nothing wrong in individuals saying, this is what I believe. And we can all say what we believe without doing it in a way that is detrimental to the people that we are sitting in front of and amongst. I really think that that's important. For me, it's about how do we mutually respect each other? So we may end up with different views, different perspectives, different interpretations, but can we still be the people of God together?
We're coming to a close now, and shortly we'll close with worship. I've done this course in company with a group of people from all over the country, all of whom were different to me in all sorts of ways in terms of background and temperament and so forth. And I had some reservations about the course from reading bits and pieces, but I found listening to people, it helped me to listen better and realize the richness of humanity, and also our spirituality, how we see God and how we see God in the other. In that sense, I found it personally very helpful, and commend it to you. Interestingly, you get closer to people as you listen to their stories, and I think it's good for community and good for our relationships in Christ with one another.